Gotham Knights was a game set to be a triumph, and yet for many people, it was an absolute failure. Even before the game came out, suffering from criticism, hiding things from the public, and not really launching to great praise. Much of this game's problems were based on performance, but as well as gameplay. But seemingly, the Loadout.com is nominating it for Game of the Year, and I thought, what better game to react to getting nominated for Game of the Year at the end of 2022 than Gotham Knights. I shredded this thing multiple times before it even came out, had lots of bad vibes from the gameplay. I basically accused it of looking like a mobile game. Let's take a look at how they justify their position. If you like this video, hit subscribe, hit the bell button, and make sure you're here for the live stream. So the Loadout's Game of the Year 2022 nominees, Gotham Knights. So this is one of the ones they're nominating. WB Games Montreal RPG Bonanza Gotham Knights is one of the finest Batman stories to exist and deserves to be in the Loadout's Game of the Year discussion. Now, I can't comment on the story. I have heard from people that have played the game that it is, a good story. There's good elements to the story, but that is about where the praise ends from most of the people that I have spoken to. So they said here, yes, you have clicked on the right article. Filling the Batman-shaped void in gaming this year is Gotham Knights, a new chapter in the halls of DC Comics. While the Loadout's official Gotham Knights review may have taken issue with it, I'm here to justify why it's my personal nomination for Game of the Year. So at the very least, it sounds like the Loadout took issue with things in the game. I don't know how any actual gaming outlet could have not taken the game to task for its numerous problems and, in my opinion, bad game design decisions, and then comparing it to games that were 7, 8, and more years old. It just didn't stack up against the other Batman games at all. It felt like an enormous step backwards. You see, the Bat family has yearned for a shot in the spotlight for years, while excellent comic runs from Scott Snyder and James have come and gone. Worry not, as Gotham Knights confidently unleashes an essential DC story for new and hardcore fans. I'm not going to allow that to be a justification for a Game of the Year nomination. Like, you can tell a good story, but if the rest of the game is arguably terrible in comparison to other next-gen titles. Keep in mind, Gotham Knights was a $70 next-gen only title. They quietly left behind old gen. They quietly unveiled that there would not be 60 FPS in the game at all. They did it in a Discord. They didn't let anybody know. I know there were fanboys out there trying to spin that. There was apparently some video from one outlet saying that they were playing with the 30 FPS ray tracing mode, which is an industry standard for $70 next-gen games for the most part. So nobody got surprised when they heard there was a 30 FPS ray tracing mode. That's in many of the $70 PlayStation games that you can play right now. The absence of a performance mode was significant, and beyond that, just looking at the gameplay, it was arguably reminiscent of a mobile game. Like, compare it to the Marvel Future Revolutions game, and much of the player movement and pivots and animations were just light years behind other games in this category. Grab your batarangs and shark spray, because this is why Gotham Knights deserves to be part of the Loadout's Game of the Year 2022 discussion. It takes a while to shake the muscle memory of the Arkham franchise, but serving up brutal beatdowns in Gotham Knights' more methodic combat never fails to induce a Joker-sized grin. All right, so this right here is subtle, but I see what they're attempting to do. They're attempting to say that if you don't like their more methodic combat, it's because you're dealing with muscle memory from Arkham. That's what you're expecting. No. I've played numerous melee-based beat-em-up games. I've even played games where instead of using my fists, I have a sword. There are weapons in this game. There are things in your hand. You can see Robin down there toting a staff. I don't think it has anything to do with it going for a more methodic combat style and my Arkham muscle memories messing with me. This game is woefully behind virtually any melee game you can play right now. It felt stiff, awkward, it lacked basic features like locking on to the enemy, and it never truly delivered a moment-to-moment impactful feeling. It always felt a little input delayed and scripted, and again, it felt like a mobile game. Even the menu systems navigated kind of in a strange way, and they looked kind of awkward. None of this felt like it was built for the next-gen landscape. So much of this game felt odd and out of place. in this realm, in this genre, it just doesn't seem to fit in the halls of heroic melee-based games, whether it's Spider-Man or even games like Assassin's Creed. This game does not measure up. Testing the limits of each hero comes with its own thrills. Utilizing Robin's balletic movement, I've never heard ballet or balletic movement before, or Red Hood's hulking mass help you carve your own approach. I disagree with this. The move sets and the combat is so dadgum simple, you're not carving your own approach. It feels so scripted and so rehearsed. None of it felt like you were able to sort of come up with your own play style. I watched numerous people talk about this. Many people played at length and just felt like the combat never really gets out of a lane. It's always very, very predictable, rehearsed, and it's one button press combat. Pairing gadgets and a trusty co-op partner together ensure the hierarchy of Gotham changes for good. No. The city itself is a loving fusion of Matt Reeves and Joel Schumacher's gothic Art Deco aesthetic. I can't believe anybody would praise the way that the city looks. Have you seen the side-by-side comparisons to Arkham Knight? It's not even a comparison. This game looks so Bush League. It looks so pedestrian compared to just how beautiful and haunting and dark Gotham Arkham Knight looked compared to this game. Praising the city is an interesting angle to take given all of the embarrassing comparisons that this game has seen put up against games that are almost a decade old. Chilling hazes of fog ebb and flow around high-rises, shielding the blinding glow of vibrant neon signage. Yeah, draw distances and rain and weather effects were one of the things pointed out as being pretty bad in this game, again, in comparison to a game that's like 7 or 8 years old. So I'm not sure what it is they're talking about. Below them are hundreds of seedy alleyways and high street attractions with condensation brimming off the windows. Bringing this up again seems strange. The rain on Batman's cape in the Arkham Knight footage when compared to the reflections and the rain effects in this game. Again, it's embarrassing. They did a terrible job with this game's appearance and aesthetic, especially when you think about how the city needs to feel alive and it needs to feel cool and awesome. I mean, go play Spider-Man and just swing through New York and then come run around this game and you'll see what I'm talking about. Speeding through rain-soaked roads on the Bat Cycle is one thing, but using Robin's Slideways or Batgirl's Glide abilities are just as fun. Once again, I don't know why you would draw attention to that. I don't know why you would draw attention to that. Because when you compare it to driving around in the Batmobile or ziplining around in Arkham Knight, this game just looks terrible. And the thing that bothered me the most in all of the debates about Gotham Knights were the people saying, it's a different development team. Stop comparing it to Arkham Knights. It's a different game. What on earth? Like, why would you do that? So when I went and played Ghost of Tsushima, I wouldn't compare it to other similar titles in completely different development teams. It made sense to compare the stealth mechanics to Assassin's Creed or some of the melee-based combats to other melee-based games. I think you can draw comparisons between like Ghost of Tsushima and Jedi Fallen Order. Why? You're using a sword. What's it feel like? There's obvious influences in the next Jedi game because there's 5 stances in Jedi Survivor, very similar to the stances in Ghost of Tsushima. And maybe compare the stances in Ghost of Tsushima to Neo, another game with, changing stances. And this is in the same universe. It's not like we're comparing Spider-Man to Batman and saying, well, the melee doesn't feel as strong. Like, obviously, Spider-Man's combat, if you've played it, is more agile. It's more aerial. You're not supposed to be on the ground for too long. Very different than the rough and tumble, fisticuffs of the Batman games. But you can still compare them as action-adventure, melee-based, third-person combat games and say, look, Spider-Man does these things well, does this thing well, and then this is things that were done well in the Batman games. In this game, it just doesn't feel like it ever rises to the occasion. It feels like the rough scaffolding of a game that never left its conceptual phase. Like, all these characters are cool looking, but they don't do anything that feels or looks like a modern game. It all feels very dated, clunky, and again, it feels like a mobile game got ported to PC and to console. Of course, none of this matters if there isn't a great story to tie it all together. Gotham Knights excels and then some in that department. Sure, hearing Red Hood explain his tragic backstory is grating, but it's worth enduring for the game's emotional beats. With such a dominant force of justice gone from the world, each hero has their own burdens to bear in Batman's wake. Though Dick Grayson has ventured off independently to Bloodhaven, his transition into the de facto leader of the pack is particularly well handled. I can't comment on this because I didn't play the game at length, but I will say this. The Arkham games voice acting is so good that when one of the voice actors didn't feel as good in Arkham Knight, I kind of noticed it. The voice actor for Batman, we had the voice actor for Commissioner Gordon, and then Barbara Gordon was like noticeably not as good. She wasn't bad, it was just the quality was so high. Again, you're going up against that. To act as if Gotham Knights isn't going to be compared or pitted against the game that it's sort of standing on. It's like, okay, Batman's now dead, it's now the Bat family's turn. It makes perfectly good sense for people to say, I don't think it sounds as good. I don't think the voice acting in this game was at the level of the previous Batman games, which again, I think is a fair comparison, which hurts the story in my mind. I don't care how good the story is, if your voice acting's kind of mid, that's going to affect the execution. Fresh from the tutelage of Bruce Wayne, youngster Tim Drake is still eager to prove his worth. I found myself playing as Robin more so than the other knights and became more drawn to this journey, especially as looming threats in the form of the Court of Owls and League of Shadows emerged, but you can't save Gotham City alone, that's for sure. Playing Gotham Knights with a friend is undoubtedly one of the best co-op experiences you can find in 2022. Kirby, then the Forgotten Land, and Star Wars Skywalker Saga, and I don't know, any other co-op game made by an indie title knock this thing around as far as being a better co-op experience. I have heard that that's the best way to play the game, but my gosh, 30 FPS, tethered co-op. They said it was untethered, but it basically is tethered because anytime you do a mission, it's going to pull you so you can explore the city separately, which I guess I don't know why you would do that. I stand by the people who think this was originally going to be a live service game and ended up not being a live service game. It got to the point where I genuinely felt guilty for progressing the story without my co-op partner. Each new twist and character beat was worth waiting for or replaying again, and that I did, having completed the story twice with a third and fourth replay in progress on PS5 and Steam Deck respectively. Jiminy Christmas. Games aren't cheap these days, but the game's grip on me was worth double dipping for. This is admittedly good for them. They enjoyed it. I don't have anything against somebody enjoying a game. Great. But if you're going to attempt to defend the game's quality, your enjoyment of it's not a defense. You have to be able to establish the game's quality by examining the parts. And if you truly examine the combat, the graphical fidelity, the performance issues, especially on PC, this game does not deserve a nomination for Game of the Year. It deserves a nomination for one of the worst games of the year. I actually bought it on my PS5 because I love playing co-op games with my wife. We have two PS5s. It's like, oh, we'll play together. It'll be fun. Even though I thought from the beginning it wasn't going to be a great game, I thought, oh, it'll be a mindless punchy punch game. No, it performed so poorly and was so unenjoyable. I never once touched this game with my wife. I played it one day for a couple of hours and could barely stomach those. Strongly disagree with this article. Good for you. Glad you enjoyed it, but this game shouldn't be on any Game of the Year nomination list unless it's a worst Game of the Year nomination list, which is where I would put it. If you like this video, hit subscribe, hit the bell button so I can see you in my live streams or my next upload. Thanks so much for watching this one. I will see you in the next video.